fighting the technology. Allie, can I just get the lights for me back there? This is where it's going to get odd because now that we've lost our sunlight during the day, I've got to get out this weekend again, all my free time. I can get out this weekend and buy a lamp so we can see our notes in here. Right. So we've got some things covered today to wrap up 16th century Northern Europe. Time remaining at the end of class, we'll talk a little bit about the exam. I'm going to presume that people haven't started cramming yet, so it's kind of hard to do any sort of discussion stuff that way, but we'll talk a little bit more about sort of how to perform well on this exam, which I think is something that translates to almost every exam you might take. So we were looking at 16th century Germany. We talked about Northern Renaissance, talking about north of the Alps, right? So we're talking about particularly Germany and the Low Countries, and we really just are almost done wrapping up Germany. I cut Holbein out of the slide list as well as some terms on the back that you don't need to bother with. So look at the updated slide study sheet, and they just crossed through the things that I got rid of, okay? So we have a Grunewald downtown, and it's based on this altarpiece at a monastery in Isenheim in eastern France or western Germany. It's in the Alsace region, which only become France sort of in the 20th century. What was Germany at the time? And you can see very clearly there's a great similarity between the two. In both of them, he puts the crucifixion scene in under cover of darkness, taking literally what the Bible says about the sun darkening at the moment of Christ's death. Our work includes the standard people we're used to seeing at a crucifixion scene: the Virgin Mary, John the Evangelist, and Mary Magdalene weeping at his feet. The Isenheim altarpiece, in its scene of the crucifixion in the center, includes figures that are not normally there. In particular, on the right is John the Baptist. And at the end of class, on whatever that last day we met was, Tuesday, we talked about the fact that he is there because of the function of the altarpiece. That this was in full view of the people being treated at this hospital. They were being treated for skin diseases. Now, they didn't know a cure yet. People were coming there to die. It was palliative care, right? They didn't have a cure for it. They didn't know what was causing it. So all they could do was make them comfortable until they passed away from it. And the way they did this was with mineral water from a natural spring at the monastery. So the Baptist is there for that reason, because he salves the soul in the way the monks were salving the body. And the reason he's odd is because he's dead by this point. He's not supposed to be there at the crucifixion. He's already passed on. He's already been beheaded. So we have these references to what the monastery did. The Baptist, behind him is a lake as well. Mary Magdalene has her ointment jar at her feet. We know from another part of the Bible that she wiped Christ's feet with her hair, anointed them with oil, with that idea of rubbing the skin with something nice, right? I'm talking about the oil, not the hair. Right? It relates to this function. And the fact that the people that were being treated here had these really horrible, painful skin diseases accounts for the saints that we see on the sides. That Saint Sebastian on the left, he was shot full of arrows. And we see him, and of course that's skin affliction. And on the right is Saint Anthony. These were the patron saints of the monastery. Saint Anthony also suffered skin diseases and prayed in the desert. And in fact, the disease that they were curing there, not curing is not the right word, treating, was actually called Saint Anthony's fire. That caused these horrible rashes all over the body, right, breaking out in boils. And actually, they were having hallucinations as well, right? Saint Anthony's fire. So Saint Anthony's on the right, Saint Sebastian on the left, and they are there also because the function of the altar. Our work. Did that answer your question, Danielle? Okay. Our work is based on this, and seems to be not necessarily a souvenir. I wouldn't call it that. But someone who had probably known this work, wanted a variation of it for their own private use. Because it's pretty small, about like yay. Whereas the altarpiece is huge. And you can maybe tell by looking at the room around it just how large the altarpiece is. Right? And again, meant to be seen in public. But the fact that it's based on it accounts for why, you can see how closely it is, right? This is in our gory section. We're coming up on Halloween, so this is good. Right? Christ's body is horribly afflicted in the Isenheim altarpiece. And that's because of the skin disease that the people are suffering. They're suffering like Christ did. And we should look to him for a model. Our piece models on that. So one wonders if it's not made for someone with a connection to that monastery as well. Because the connection is incredibly close. It's not a verbatim, and it's not a tracing by any means, because the size is so different. Right? So that's sort of where we left off on Tuesday. We're going to now move and look at Renaissance art in the Low Countries. Right? And one of the things that we see happening in the 16th century, in the Renaissance period of the Low Countries, is that the major center of art production has shifted when we get to the 16th century. When we look at the 15th century, in the Low Countries, which is modern Belgium, Holland, right, the primary areas have been Bruges, that's where Jan van Eyck lived. But he also worked in Ghent, which was right nearby. And then we talked about Brussels, which is where Roger van der Weyden lived. And these are the major economic centers and the major artistic centers of the 15th century. But in the 16th century, the economy has shifted to a new town of Antwerp. It's not a new town, but a new economic powerhouse. It sits on this massive river. Import, export, lots of extra money, and it becomes the most successful center of art production, of economic production, in pretty much all of Northern Europe in the 16th century, maybe second only to Paris. Right? So Quentin Matsys is working in the city of Antwerp. But this is only about 30 or 40 miles from Ghent. Right, only about 50 miles from Bruges. It's only about 40 miles from Brussels. Right, it's in the exact same region, and that means what we're going to see when we look at the Low Countries in the Renaissance period, in the 16th century. What we're going to see is a very strong influence, a legacy of those artists that we talked about before, the realism of Jan van Eyck. Right, the details that we saw, adding up to some sort of symbolism. Right? And we saw this legacy too in Germany. Right? Dürer's approach to art is closer in many ways to Van Eyck than it is to the Italian body type he borrows. Right? He's meticulous, as if working with a magnifying glass. There is some suggestion that for the money changer and his wife on the right, that Matsys might have known Van Eyck's work. We have two figures in an interior, each of them engaged in a separate activity, but bound together like a husband and wife. Things arranged within the room to suggest their character. An orange on the shelf. Behind our money changer, behind Giovanni Arnolfini, and most prominently, a convex mirror, now on the shelf in front of them, rather than on the wall behind them. These suggest to us that Matsys might have known this picture. And we know where this picture was around this time. It was sitting in the town of Mechelen, which is about 15 or 20 miles from Antwerp. Okay. So, the Van Eyck legacy lives on. The use of details to enhance meaning lives on. Okay. But one of the things that we see happening as we talk about the use of details is that they're used in a somewhat different way. There seems to be in the 16th century in the Netherlands in particular, or the Low Countries, same area, an interest in images that have a moral message, that try to teach us proper modes of behavior. And the way that they do this is to show us people doing something wrong. The best way to learn how to do stuff right is to see what happens when you do stuff wrong. To look at the idiots out there. Right? Don't behave like that. Right? So most of these images we're going to look at are allegories, very pedagogical. They're trying to teach us something. And they're trying to teach us proper modes of living by showing us the foolishness of people around us. Right? And this is set up by that mirror in the foreground. I think I have details that coming up, right? So I haven't been able to get a really good picture of this, right? This is about as good as I can get it. Grainy. It's in the Louvre. And I haven't been, every time I go to Paris, I never go to the Louvre. There's too many cafes in Paris, you know? If you ever go to Paris, don't go to the Louvre. It's the world's worst viewing experience, right? Crowd behind the Mona Lisa, wait in line 7 hours, you know? There's a lot of better things you can do. Go get a glass of rosé somewhere, you know? Some nice brie and bread, right? Cup of coffee. Well, okay. Fellow in the mirror, notice he's even wearing a red turban, just like the mirror in the Van Eyck. So this is another hint that he's knowing exactly what he's doing. And again, it's not the best of details here. But what we can see in the mirror is a window illuminating, and he's reading a book. He's got a book in his hand. And again, I got to tell you this because my details not showing it all that well. In his hand, he's got not just a book open, but he's got a piece of cloth in his hands as he holds the book. Right? So he's draped this piece of velvet over his hand as he's holding the book, which suggests the book is very precious. And because of the size of it and the way he's squinting at it, we think it's a prayer book, like maybe a book of hours. And the reason we think this as well is that outside the window behind it is a church. Right? So this is proper behavior here. He's deeply looking at a book, intently reading a prayer book, and a church is there. Now, let's look at the money changer's wife, right? The money changer is a man, Antwerp being an international trading center, right? You had people coming from many countries trading, and that meant there was somebody that you needed, waiting for the euro. You needed someone who's going to trade your Spanish coins into English coins, into Flemish coins, right? You have these different currencies. And so someone's got to figure out, do that transaction, right? You can still find these MBOs, right? Places that will do that, right? But for him, as he's doing it, right, you'll notice that what he's doing is he's weighing his coins. Can you see that? Very clearly, he's got a scale in his hand. He's got some weight in one of the cans that's underneath his elbow. And he's got a coin in the other one. And the little metal thing that's open is the place where he puts the weight. Right? That little gold thing that's open in the front. So he's weighing the coins. Now, why would he be doing that? Why is he weighing his coins? But wouldn't the mark point it out like it does today, right? The stamp says these coins are all stamped. The stamp tells us what country they're from. So they need to weigh them for that, right? You can read that.
Are they fairly made of the metal of the
Yeah, is that what you're going to say? Remember?
yeah, the weight for it.
Right. If you're a crafty market, and you have the coins, okay, our coins are worth what the government says they're worth. So a penny is not a penny's worth of copper. Right? The dime is not 10 cents worth of metal. Right? None of our coins are valued based on the metal that they're made from. Right? They're based on whatever it says on the stamp. Right? The mark. Back in the day, coins were valued based on the weight of the metal. So a 20 guilder coin, $20 coin, would be $20 worth of gold. And it would be stamped as such, coming from different countries. So the metal itself is the basis for the value of the coin. So it's important to weigh it, because if you're a crafty tradesman, you can shave a little bit off, right? You can make a stamp based on the old stamp, you know, you make your own stamp. Shave a little bit stamp of coin, and if you can do that with 100 coins, then you've got 101 coins. Right? So he's making sure that the money is worth what it says it's worth. Right? This is big, right? If you could take a €5 coin and stamp it with something that says 10 euros, double your money, right? He's making sure that the money he's got is worth what he says. Now, he also trades in other things: crystal, pearls, rings. There's a rosary beads behind him, just as there were in the Arnolfini portrait on the wall. Right? So he's making sure. Now, this is a very secular activity, right? He's making sure the money he has is worth what he's been told it's worth. What is she doing? She's reading the book. She's got a book. Can you tell what kind of book that is from the details? What's the picture of? It's a Bible, right? It's a prayer book, because we've got a virgin and child. Right? That's the Madonna holding the baby Jesus. Right? We've seen so many times. Right? It's kind of prayer book, okay? So she's reading the prayer book. Look at the two halves of the family. Okay? He's taking care of the secular duties. She's taking care of the spiritual duties. But is she? Look at the book again. Look at what she's doing. Is she reading the book? What's she doing? She's looking at him, and more particularly, she's looking at the money. Right? She's distracted from her prayers by secular activity. Right? What better secular activity than money to distract her? Now, the other thing is you might not notice. Those of you who've got 3-ring Bibles, put your pen down for a second, and put your hand where hers are with the open book, and start to figure out which way she's turning those pages. Back to front. Right? She's reading it like you read People magazine or something, right? I mean, she's not reading it, she's just sort of thinking it, right? She's flipping through it. And she's flipping through it the wrong direction. Right? So she's coming backwards with it, and as she's doing that, she's covering up the Virgin Mary. Right? The page that has the picture of the Virgin will be covered up in just a second. Because she's flipping the other direction. Okay? So, this, if we read it really closely, what we find with this image is that, in fact, it's not just that the two halves of the couple are each deeply engaged with different parts of the family's duties, you know, the duties to the world, the duties to the rich, but that the worldly temptation has distracted her from prayer. So what we wind up seeing is an image that's really based on foolish behavior, a negative example of how to behave. Now, this is the sort of thing that many artists are practicing in as we look at 16th century art in the Low Countries, are these moralizing messages. This is not put forth as something that we should think is a great example. It's put forth as an example of how not to behave. And on a certain level, they're slightly humorous. This one's not all that funny, but once you realize how she's flipping through the book, it becomes a little bit more humorous than you might think at first. And you, the viewer, are meant to think of the parallel, the unequal parallel between her not reading her book and the guy in the mirror reading his intently. He is the opposite of her. Right? He shows the proper behavior. It's reflecting out toward you. This is what you should do. Right? She's not behaving properly. We have this wonderful map site downtown. Who's doing this? Somebody's, yeah. Where, again, we have sort of half-length figures, two of them side by side. We have a third one now in the back. Read the picture. What's going on here? Sydney, have you spent enough time looking at it? You want to tell us can you read the picture? What's going on? Come on, you can just look at it. What's going on? What's he doing? Oh, no, sorry, the guy with the red turban on the right, the old man. What's the old man doing?
He's looking at that woman, and he's getting the guy behind him.
That's okay, very good. So he's looking, and he's doing more than looking at that woman, right? I made the joke. I can't use the joke again. He's hardly eating her, right? He's got one hand behind her head. He's pulling her into him, and where's his other hand? Right? Okay. Yeah, he's topping the field, right? That's what we used to call it when I was in high school. Now, she seems to be kind of welcoming all of this, doesn't she? This is why they're the ill-matched couple, because he's old, she's young, he's stupid. He thinks she likes him. Right? He thinks, ooh, young girl, gonna go for me, toothless old guy. Right? And she has lifted his money. Now, there's a good chance, because we're going to have the cards and the coins in the corner, that she's already fleeced him. You know what I mean? She's already sort of started taking his money by playing cards and cheating. But she decides, it seems, let's just speed it up a bit. Right? So, if I can get him to sort of flirt me up, I can get my hand in his pocket, take his coin bag, hand it off to my friend. Right? So, the old man is foolish. He thinks the young woman likes him, and he's going to lose everything for this activity, right? Now, based on the costume, the guy in the background, you'll notice, this red towel, sort of skull cap, with what looks like fish fins across the top, but also has donkey ears. You can just see one of them. He's a jester. Right? He's a person, what do jesters do when they perform at court? They point out the foolish behaviors of people. They speak the truth. The fool who speaks the truth. And so, he's reaching out the money, he's helping her to take him down the road. To highlight the fact, look at his face, right? Sideways glance, tongue sticking out, right? Mocking him entirely. And he, of course, can't see it because he's too involved in looking at her. Now, she has this sort of come hither sort of look about her, and the way that she's dressed, which is quite fancy, has led some to suggest that maybe she's a prostitute, that he's in a house of ill repute. But she is dressed rather better than he is. So it's not kind of the first time she's done this. Right? But one of the things I noticed about this painting, just this last year, and I've never really seen this written up anywhere, is that this is like the no lips. Like it's okay for him to be grabbing her any way he wants, but it looks like he's moving in for a kiss. And if you look at the way that Matthijs has painted this face, first look at the wonderful details that we've come used to with Northern European art, with Flemish art. The veins, the whiskers, the ugly teeth. But look at her hand. She's pushing him away. Look at how the thumb buries in his chin. And how the fingers on the side of his face are pushing back. You see the skin folds around those fingers. Right? So he's taking it a step further. Like he's already groping her, right, on top of it. He's moving in for a kiss, and she's like, I'm not going anywhere near those teeth, right? And pushing back at him. So there's this really subtle interplay between them. And the whole point for you and me, right, is that as we see this guy in his 60s think that this girl in her 20s likes him, he's an idiot, right? And if you are ever in that situation, and most of our pictured by probably men, if some pretty young thing, gap-toothed old man likes you, she's probably in it for something else. Right? She's not in it for you. And that's the message of the book. The most famous of these moralists, and he's not working in Antwerp, he's in a different city. He's actually in the city of Bosch. Is Hieronymus Bosch, and you may have heard of him before. He's really quite famous because his works are so very, very strange. But here we see an image that shows the death of a man who tried to save all his money. The death of the miser. Who's got this work? Right? Have you looked into it yet and found out some stuff? You've got a good bibliography going on now. Right? So the miser is the guy on the bed. Okay? And he is shown, this is his deathbed. The last moment of his life. And we know that because the figure of death himself has just come through the door. Right? A skeleton with a lance. Looking an awful lot like Durer's death on a pale horse from the Four Horsemen. Cowl around him. He's going to come and take life from the man in bed. And you'll notice that just as this happens, an angel appears over the man's shoulder. Right? Trying to, at the very last minute, get him to do the right thing. And the question is, will he? Right? You'll notice that there's this toad-like demon poking his little head out from underneath the curtain, offering him a bag of something, we presume a bag of money. And he's reaching for it. And the angel is saying, don't do it, don't do it. Remember your faith. And you can see what the angel's pointing to, the window up above, where there's a crucifix, Christ on the cross, and a beam of light coming down behind it, shining directly on our miser. And we don't know which way he's going to go, although we kind of get the idea that even on his deathbed, he's going to go for the money, ruin his salvation. Right? So again, making choices, a very similar theme to the money changer and his wife, and this idea of a moralizing image, an image that teaches us proper behavior by showing us the consequences of improper behavior. I have a couple more details from this to show you, but before we leave this behind, I want you to notice those, what look like the linear strokes that you see, especially in the red curtain. That's the drawing on the panel that the artist started with. Remember with Van Eyck and the Ghent altarpiece, we used infrared to see the drawing underneath the panel? Right? Here the paint over the years has gone transparent through wear and tear and whatnot. And we can actually see right through the paint to the drawing underneath. And you'll notice that the arrow of death was once a whole lot longer, coming all the way over, almost hitting the hand of the guy, reaching down for the bag of money. We're not quite sure who this is in the foreground. We think it might be the same guy earlier in his life, although there's a lot of debate on this. Somebody who's definitely saving up his money. He's got a strong box. He holds the key to the chest on his hip, but he also holds in his hand a set of rosary beads. Prayer and money again. He's depositing money here, saving up, at the same time praying. Underneath the case are more demons lurking. Again, the consequences of our life have, the actions of our life have consequences. Now you notice that the word is tall and narrow, and the perspective shoots you off to the right. That's because originally it was part of a triptych. It was a hinged triptych. There were drill holes on the side. The center's been lost. The right-hand panel has been cut in two. Part of it is in Yale University's art collection. The other part in the Louvre showed the foolishness of mankind, the ship of fools. And you can tell from the perspective that this would have been probably on the left, the other one on the right. And as a triptych, these wings folded, right? Just like the Ghent altarpiece, it opened and closed. And as the center panel was folded, there was something painted on the outside, and that still survives as well. The panels were sawn vertically down the middle, and the backs were sold separately from the front. So on the back of this originally was half of that. That has since been put together as a single panel, touched up, and then cut into an octagon. A lot of damage to this piece through years. So that's the original back of this, and the original back of the bits from the other wing. So when you came to the triptych, you would have seen this on the outside and opened it up to this other scene. What is this scene? We call it the Wayfarer. It fits directly in with these things we've been talking about. It's a man on the path of life. Landscape as a symbol for our life. And he's moving his way through the landscape. He's about to reach a threshold, a gate. There's a cow on the other side of that gate. There's a snarling dog behind him. This is a treacherous path. Life is a treacherous path. And he's looking over his shoulder, burdened with this big bag, moving his way through the landscape. He's looking back at that house. What kind of house is that? Sorry? You said what? A farmhouse. Well, let's take a look at what's going on inside the house. There's a couple in the doorway. What are they doing? Snuggling. Right? He's got his hand again moving toward her breast, kissing her on the cheek. One wonders about our ill-matched lovers again. There's a woman looking out from the window here. There's a sign with a banner and a goose on it. There's a stick on the roof with a pot on the stick. This is a tavern, right? A tavern / hotel / whorehouse. Why do I say whorehouse? Because of what's going on here and because of the goose. The neck of the goose is an obvious phallic symbol, often seen on signs in whorehouses in the 16th century. This is not a good place. So it's more than just a farmhouse, it's a house of ill repute. And it's a place he's walked by. He's moved past it. He's about to go through that gate. Right? But he's got his doubts. He's looking back over his shoulder and thinking, maybe this is a place I want to go back to. And the snarling dog at his feet is certainly there specifically to suggest the dangers that lay on our path in life. Again, moralizing. Now, another way that we know that this is a bad place, it's terribly run down. Right? The building is in disrepair. It is not a building of high standards. Right? That adds to the message. There's one more detail that adds to the message. Have you seen it? Look around the corner. He's peeing on the building, right? So he come out of the tavern, and who knows, maybe man just had to do that anyway, right? Without proper facilities inside. But the fact that Boston doesn't show it to us, right? And the fact that he's there urinating on the side of the building, right, indicates exactly the quality of this house that he's passed by. That he's looking back over his shoulder, thinking about whether or not it's worthwhile going back. Right? Fits in with the message of the miser, in that he too is thinking about his choices, right? Pondering whether to go the right path or the wrong one. This is exactly the same. I don't know why they named it. The Garden of Earthly Delights. There's an online section that talks about his most famous work. This is another of those works that everybody, this makes it to the New York Times crossword puzzle. It's one of these works everybody should know, coming out of an intro class. But again, landscape as movement through life, all the way from the Garden of Eden, where we inherit sin, to sin being enacted by all these crazy figures in the center, to sin being punished on the right. But what Bosch does is to show us in this landscape all sorts of wanton behavior. And it fits in with this theme that we've been talking about, which is images of how not to behave, negative examples of human behavior, not something we should aspire to, but something that we should avoid. So like I said, it starts in hell. It starts in heaven, Eden, and it ends in hell with these punishments. And if you want to see details from this, there's that online thing that I put up just yesterday with this, discussing some of these, and with some good resolution photos of it as well. Well, another artist from the end of the 15th century, this is the last Northern European artist that we'll look at, that deals with similar themes, and who knew Bach's work is Peter Bruegel. He comes from a family of painters, so we call Peter Bruegel the Elder, that's his son Peter. Peter Bruegel II, but Peter Bruegel the Younger was also a painter. Right? Peter's son Jan was also a painter. Jan's son John II was also a painter. Whole family of Bruegel working in Antwerp. Bruegel works for a publishing house. He supplies the publishing house with drawings that are then engraved by other artists, turned into prints. That same publishing house was publishing prints of Bach's work as well. This is how Bruegel knows it. And like Bach, he gives us this amazingly detailed landscape, populated with human activity, where we get this bird's-eye view, sweeping all the way to a distant horizon, where it seems as if Bruegel has included a little bit of everything, almost as if it's a world landscape. Mountains and flatlands and valleys, paths through the mountains and rivers running through. He loves putting a little hillock in the foreground, so that you get some of the figures larger than we can see them. But then it drops down and extends out. And there's a certain joy in getting in and sort of working your way through, finding out what's going on in that landscape. And a lot of it can be very, very innocent. Farmers in the field, people rowing down the river, quaint, everyday activities. By the way, there's an exhibition at the National Gallery right now of drawings from the Museum of Rotterdam. And they've got 4 or 5 of Bruegel's original drawings or something. And they give you little things like that. Yeah. It goes into the fantastic. I was just down there on Tuesday. I'm definitely going to go back. So here we've got, you can see some figures in the lower right corner. The crafty bird catcher, there he is. He's got birds that he caught on the stick. Little dog next to him barking. There's Bruegel's signature. Bruegel invented it. Bruegel created it, right? And it says A.E. Koch, or Rothermund Koch, published it. And as we work our way down, and I've got details to show you, we work our way through this landscape that is seemingly innocent at first. Here, come back to life, there we are. So nice details. People are running, and again, the whole print is pretty big. It's about like yay, right? About a foot wide, give or take, 10 inches tall. And so you have to imagine that some of these are drawn with just the most minimal of means. We have deer in mountains, right? We have a figure leading another figure on horseback, maybe on donkey back, a trail by the river, ducks swimming in the water. He knows you're going to come in and do this and look at it closely. And you get the sense that you wander through the landscape as you look at it. All the way back into the distance through these this deep valley. You see church steeples, a little village around a church. Deep in the background, another steeple on a hill. As the river that we see in the foreground works its way back, cutting through this valley. It's all incredibly charming to look at. We see paths leading up into the mountains, going past monasteries on their way up the hill. It's almost like we have on the right an easy road through the valley, the flat road. and a more difficult route up the hill. And again, we can think about this as a metaphor for life, right? There's an easy path and a difficult path. And in the foreground, we get the crafty bird catcher. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. It might just look like a genre scene. We didn't use that term, did we? Blew right past it. There's a term that we use, and it should have been on one of the slides, and it is on the review sheet. It's called genre. And when we talk about a genre scene, it's G-E-N-R-E. A genre scene is a scene of everyday life. So what we've seen is that these scenes of everyday life, when we encounter them, are not just scenes of everyday life. But they come front-loaded, intentionally front-loaded, with moral allegory, right? A lesson to teach. So this also seems almost like a genre scene, a country bird catcher, and the world, his world around him. But what Bruegel is doing here, and what he does in a number of instances, is well-known sayings in Dutch, and he gives them visual form. So a crafty bird catcher in Dutch was a way of talking about someone who was a really good seduction. A guy who had made a crafty bird catcher. That was a term they would use, turn of a phrase, right? So our crafty bird catcher here is meant as an allegory for men who are quick and successful in seducing women. And this is alluded to really subtly by directly behind him, where we see a man and a woman meeting up on the pathway there. And Bruegel's viewers, right, you and me, this is a little difficult because we speak English. We're in America. This is not a term that we see all the time. But a Dutch-speaking viewer of this mantra, having seen this work, would have known that a crafty bird catcher, this is what it is. There's an allegory here. So again, is this a positive image? No, it's meant to instruct by showing us how not to do it. Show us the wrong way of doing things. Like I said, Bruegel did this a lot. This is a fantastic picture. This is in Berlin. And he takes the safer landscape that we see in the crafty bird catcher painting, or print, now painting with this aerial view, right? Looking down on this busy landscape, kind of like Boston, Garden of Earthly Delights. And it's just filled with light figures, and every one of them, right? Every little figure grouping is another one of these Dutch parables, these Dutch sayings. There's something like 80 to 100 different Dutch phrases illustrated, and all of them are stupid human behavior. And I'll show you a few details from this, even though it's on the slide, because it sets the stage for exactly what Bruegel was trying to do with the princess, right? Is to give us these sorts of allegories. I got to look at my notes because there are, like I said, more than 80 of them, and I've got to just come up with which ones I've got illustrated here because I don't have them all anymore. Let's look at details. Okay, well, what's he doing there? The guy with the knife. That's a saying we have in English as well. Banging your head against the wall, right? You heard this. Don't go banging your head against the wall. It means don't sort of do things that are going to hurt yourself, right? Repetitive behavior that's stupid. It just simply hurts. So he's banging his head against the wall. And that exists in Dutch every bit as much as it exists in English. This also includes, in addition to banging your head against the wall, we have this fellow up here. He's tying a bell on a cat. This is another Dutch phrase that is basically a euphemism for a bad or a dangerous plan. Down here, one man shears sheep, while the other man shears a pig. Now, sheep have got fur. You can shear something from the sheep. But pigs don't. They have very, very, very short hair. So it's, again, stupid things. One person's knows where to get wool, the other one simply does not. And again, people in the 15th century would have known this. The pig pulls the plug. Back there. Right? This is the effect of neglect. Right? When the cat's away, the mice will play, we would say. Right? Well, in this case, the Dutch would say, the pig pulls the plug and he's yanking the plug handle off out of a wine barrel. Some of these are really quite rude, and we'll see them in detail. But here in the back, on the horizon line, the blind lead the blind, and both shall fall into the pit. Right? So three figures walking through the landscape blindly. In the foreground, we have a man dragging a block. Right? Dragging the block is to be deceived by a lover. You're left to drag the block. Horse droppings are not figs. Right? Don't mistake horsecraft for sweet fruit. And he is there gathering the droppings from the horse as he leaves them behind. I have a detail note. Take a shit on the gallows means that you don't care about the world at all. Right? Take a crap on the gallows. The big fish eats the little fish. Right? There's another one that we still have in English there. Right? Throwing your money into water. We say don't invest good money after bad. Don't throw good money after bad. It's a false or a bad investment. How's that? They both crap through the same hole. It's a way of saying that they're in complete agreement. They're so close that they both crap through the same hole. This fellow's taking a crap on the world. The scene that we see down below, just here, is a symbol for the earth, an orb with a cross. And the man leans out the window to defecate on top of it. Sorry about that. Jesus usually holds this when he's shown as the Savior of the world. By the way, there's a Leonardo painting going to be sold of Christ holding one of these. The only Leonardo painting in private hands still. Coming up for sale at Christie's, like next month. Right? He's looking at $100 million. So if you got a little bit of cash, buy Leonardo. But this usually shows, and you'll notice that this one is upside down. And that's Bruegel's point, right? This is a world upside down. Right? Everything is cockeyed here. What else do we have in this one? Right? Lead each other around by the nose. There. Some of these are kind of obvious, aren't they? To lead each other around by the nose. He got his fingers up his nostrils and dragging. This is to fool your fellow man. Up at the top. Right? To look through one's hand is to turn a blind eye towards something. There's the sign on this inn. In this case, it's a half moon. And a man's urinating on it. To piss over the moon in Dutch. Anybody who tries to piss over the moon thinks way too much of themselves. Right, and their own abilities, because who could possibly do that? So Bruegel traffics in these images of proverbs, right, of sayings that are meant to instruct us on the proper way to behave by showing us exactly what happens when we don't. One last Bruegel work, and and then we'll first talk a little bit about the exam. The Hunters in the Snow. This is in Vienna. Shows a group, typical Bruegel, right? Bird's eye view over a distant landscape, the kind of landscape you learned from Bosch. A bit of a hill in the foreground to bring some of the figures closer to us. We don't really see that with the Netherlands proverbs here. But one of the things that Bruegel's quite great at is capturing weather, and we'll see this. And this is a fantastic winter scene. Hunters coming back from the hunt with their dogs, returning to the village and moving their way through the landscape. Again, I think Bruegel wants us to look at this landscape and imagine ourselves there. He's observed it so closely. We see footprints in the snow everywhere. We see all these wonderful, charming activities. Kids playing on the ice, sleds, what do you call that? Curling, right? They've got the curling irons up there. Skittles. The Dutch invented golf, and they did it on ice, and it was very different than our golf. You know, our golf tries to fall into the hole, and there are various things, hills and whatnot on the way that make it difficult. But the Dutch job is more like playing shuffleboard or other sort of aiming games. They would have a peg that they would slide and knock the ball towards. They wanted to do it on the flattest place possible, so a lake of ice was the perfect place for this. They used to do it in the streets as well, and they eventually outlawed it because kids were knocking balls through people's windows all the time, right? So that's what they're playing there. The two kids there are playing golf, right? They called it golf with a K, was the Dutch word for that. But the typical scenes, and Bruegel's very closely observed this, a woman carrying kindling back for her fire to warm her house in this terribly cold environment. The more we move back through the landscape, the more that we see these activities, kids skating and skiing, people sitting on the side of the ice to put their skates on. Another golf player down here, a cute little kid all bundled up in the middle of the ice, a dog slipping around. And then as we move our way back through, we see these wonderful Dutch houses. All the trees have lost all of their leaves. We have churches, warm places. Here's back here is interesting. And I'm just noticing it looks like the chimney's caught fire. Right? It's spitting fire out the top, and they're throwing water into it to try to put out the chimney fire and clean the chimney properly. Again, deep into the background, we see the entire landscape populated. We have a harbor, ships coming in, a church in the harbor, the flat part of this entirety of the world that we see. And in the mountains, we see paths leading up the hills. And again, halfway up the mountain, another monastery. As if the difficult route is the route to salvation. The easy route is secular. And he presents these to us. We have a crafty bird catcher. Nifty little bird trap here, seeds placed under a board, the string going into the house, and as soon as the birds go and get the seeds, he yanks the string, and the board falls down and kills them. Right? He got dinner. Figure moving with the wagon through the landscape in the back. And this brings us to the question of whether or not there's some sort of bigger moral allegory here. Have our hunters, like Bosch's Wayfarer, are they moving past temptation? There's an inn over here, right? And in fact, what is it? This is the black dog, right? This is not the home. What the sign says, the black dog. The inn of the black dog. And they've got fire outside, it's a warm place inside, it's a fairly well-kept place by comparison, but our huntsmen, with their dogs, are moving directly past it. They're not away on their return to their home. So there seems to be within this some allegory for proper behaviors. In this case, much more positive, right? We're not seeing them do something stupid. They're in fact doing something positive. This was done as part of a series of paintings. Bruegel was commissioned by a wealthy banker in Antwerp to paint a series of 6 pictures that showed the cycle of the year. The one on the right is Vienna, the one on the left is up in New York at the Met. And you can see how well he captures the different times of year. Whether it's the frozen, icy winter or the hot and lazy summer. And again, it seems to suggest that maybe the figures in the foreground also present us with some sort of moral lesson. We have hard workers on the left, we have sleeping workers on the right. There's some message about the proper kind of work. What Bruegel's turning to for these are the labors of the month. We talked about that before. That in order to illustrate the changing of the cycle, the changing of the month, what Bruegel does is he turns back to these old manuscript traditions, like the Limburg brothers that we talked about before, where we saw different activities typifying February. Bruegel's included those as well. We have warming yourself by the fire, which was the main part of the February image. We don't see them exposing themselves in the same way, but certainly he's using that tradition as he's making these images for this wealthy banker. So again, scenes of everyday life is what we've seen with every one of these pictures today, right? These genre scenes. Some of them set in landscape, some of them set in interiors, but they're scenes of everyday life that always come front-loaded with some sort of moral pedagogy, some sort of lesson on how to behave. More often than not, a negative example, showing us how not to behave, but every now and then perhaps also something positive as well to complicate the reading. Now that's our last slide. I've got nothing more slides for today. I didn't think I was going to get that far. The exam is on whenever we meet next, Monday, right? I haven't written the exam yet, simply because I didn't know how far I was going to get, right? I would hate to put that Bruegel print on the exam and have not got to it in class, right? So, and that was the last one on the slide list. So, I will be writing it this weekend. When I've got it written, I'll email you with what to expect. There are 8 questions in this section. There are 5 questions in this section, right? I'll let you know what to expect that way. I won't tell you which the ones they are, right? But I'll tell you how many they are when I have it written. Probably on Sunday, unfortunately. I still think I'm going to get to it before then because of the homecoming weekend stuff. But remember that up on Canvas is, let's see if I can do this properly. Up on Canvas is all the things you need to study, right? So if we go to Canvas, I'm going to open it up here. Sorry about this. This isn't behaving well either. Do that, do this, go. Right. Come over here so I can see it. Trying to do it backwards has never worked, right? Typing one direction and having it go the other way. So, okay, that's better. Now, here, bookmarks, MU, portal. Is there a faster way to get this than going through all this? Do you guys know? Is that what you have to do as well? A pain in the pain, right? Okay, so remember under classes, you have all the things that you need for studying, right? In-class works of art and the OERs are there. The PowerPoints and recordings are here. And this online thing, like the box I put up yesterday, is there. But on the online in-class PowerPoints and recordings, the study sheets are here. Right? And there's a slide list, which I left as a Word document so you can block and copy things if you want, that has the list of people that we're supposed to know. Remember that you need to know the period it came from, and there are 5. Early Renaissance, High Renaissance, Mannerism, Late Gothic, Northern Ren. You have to know the artist's name, the title, and the half century. Right? If you are still yet unclear of 14th versus 15th versus 16th centuries, this would be a good time to sort of get that down, right? 14th century to 1300s, 15th to the 1400s, and 16th to the 1500s, right? Just like we're in the 21st century now, right? So you'll need to be able to identify that, and as I mentioned before, the best way to probably do this is to make flashcards, right? To help you get these things committed to memory, right? There are also some terms here on the back that you should know. You'll notice I've cut some things out. And I forgot to put Venice and Alfonso de Este Ferrara, who was the patron of Bellini's naughty Feast of the Gods that we talked about last. Right? So I added him, but I cut out 2 things on here that you don't really need to know that way. Okay? There may be a section with terms where I say, for example, match the artist with the person for whom they work. So Jan van Eyck with Philip the Good of Burgundy. Does that make sense? Right? What is the genre scene? And have you be able to answer that? Right? Fairly straightforward from these. And it's not like going to be a Trivial Pursuit sort of thing. You know? I wouldn't ask you to give me a historical account of the city of Ghent. Right? Because we didn't learn that in class. Right? But they're there to help you say, okay, who worked in Ghent? You know, Van Eyck did because of the Ghent altarpiece. Who worked in Antwerp? And you found out today. Emma.
So, it's a term, like, when you apply with the terms for something particular period, like,
yeah, and that's the other reason they're here as well. So definitely as you're writing your essay, right, this will help you as well. If you have your notes and you're looking back and you're going like, I don't know how to spell the word Ghent, right? Or, you know, because it's not that hard to spell, but you never know, right? So they are there to help you to sort of think about the essays that you might write about these things, right? What was the name of that guild that Roger van der Veen worked for? Oh, yeah, it was the Crossbowmen of Leuven, right? So they definitely try to incorporate them into your essays wherever possible. That helps me to know that you're on top of stuff. Yes?
Give an example and then, like,
I haven't, again, are those on, I can't remember if there was terms on the midterm, the mock exam or not. Did I put terms on that? Right. So that's the sort of thing you might expect to see, right? It's on that mock exam. Right? Where I have some questions and I have the answers on the other side so that you could then get to it. Now if you put whose credit was inventing the winner and you said Alberti instead, who published it, I'd probably give you a half point for that because you're on the right track that way. Right? So there'll be fairly straightforward questions, and I think what I'll do is I'll pair questions with answers that you can do it this way. And that way it becomes, I think, a little bit more straightforward, especially because this is an introductory level class. Right? Does that answer your question? Okay. So you've got the study sheet, you've got the mock exams, so you have an idea of what to expect from the different kinds of parts that we'll have. Again, I'll be aiming toward a no-repeat Monday. In other words, an artist's work will only show up once, right? So if you see a Fra Angelico, you won't see another Fra Angelico. Right? I'm going to try to work toward that. The slide list is big enough to get us there. Dan.
I'm sorry, this is sort of personal, but I couldn't find the Rossellino.
The Antonio Rossellino, it's under, when we talked about David.
Yeah.
It's there in the PowerPoint. Okay. Maybe that might have been one of the makeup exams. Makeup Remember we had that class that we missed, right? And I put it, because I was sick, and I put up 2 sort of 20-minute, it might be on one of those. And that might be why that you're not as familiar with it as the stuff that you saw in class, because you're only going to get it through the online version. But those are recorded at home, so the recording should work a little bit better, right, than this one, right? Finally, there's also a study sheet, which is the sort of questions you should ask about the work of art. And again, I'm not going to expect you to be able to answer every one of these 10 bullet points about every work of art. But there's a good chance 1 or 2 of them you can about every work of art, right? And those are the sorts of things that we're going back to what Emma said, what should we include in the essays, right? Questions like these, right? The 4th major bullet, what does the work depict, which figures, where are they, what are they doing? And I showed you the crafty bird catcher. You should be able to tell me that the crafty bird catches in the lower right corner, right? He's got the birds on the stick, and that is an allegory for seduction. And Bruegel intends it as a moral. But you could also talk about the fact that he loves these landscapes that you see from a bird's eye view, where he includes as much detail as he can. What I'm looking for from the essays is stuff that shows me that you're not seeing it for the first time. That you know something about it. That you're not just describing what you're looking at, but you're telling me, you're using that description to tell me something more. To tell me something that you've learned. Right? I don't know yet. I'm going to email you this weekend when I got it written. Right? I almost always am able to bring the exam to around 100 points total. But remember that I grade based on the highest grade in class. So I'm not so worried about 100 points anymore. Since it's always going to be 90% of the highest grade, which is almost never 100. Right? And once I know how many slides will be in each part and how many questions will be in each part, once I've got that part written, I'll email the entire class and say, okay, here's what you should expect. Okay, you'll see them, there'll be 2 ways. So on the mock exam, it'll be exactly the size of that, which is 1.5 or 1.75. I balance it between those 2 simply to save paper, right? But you'll also have it on the screen, right? It'll be up on the pictures, will be up on the screen as well, but they'll be up on the screen in a timed fashion, which is based on 30 years of experience doing this, right? About how long people need for these things. And the nice thing that I try to do, if there's anything nice about an exam, is that I give you 15 to 20 minutes at the end of class. It doesn't take up the entire hour and 15. So there are 15 to 20 minutes at the end of class where you can go back and see one of the big pictures again, right? And I need to see slide number 3 again. I need to see slide number 5 again, right? And I'll go back and I'll show it to you in those last 15 to 20 minutes, right? So you'll have it twofold, and the printout in your hands, right, the write-on exam, they will be in black and white because it's too expensive to print in color, okay? But the color ones will be up on screen. Still, if you've done the flashcards and whatnot, you know it, you can go through and do the IDs. Bing, 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 right? Back in the day, we didn't have that opportunity, right? It's just a wait till the next slide came. So, okay? If you have questions while you're studying, if there's something in your notes you're missing, right? Email me. But be patient, right? If you email me on Saturday morning, I'm not going to get to it until Saturday late afternoon, right? So don't just go, where's mine, right? Because I got a fairly full slate this weekend. So, but I will get back to you if you have questions as you're studying. Jasmine has one more question and then we're, what's that? Yeah. That's right. There'll be, again, you'll get a handout that looks exactly like the mock exam, only bigger, right? So, it'll look exactly like that, except it will be in black and white, right? And it will be longer, okay? And then they will come up on screen as well. At the same time, you can work at your own pace, right? So if you don't know something, you can wait till it comes up on the screen and look at it there. But if you know, oh, that's Raphael's Alba Madonna from the early 16th century, I know that right away, you can go through and hit the ones that you know. And I tried to put these up in order There are two reasons I choose the order that they come up. One of them is that people usually gain confidence from the first part. Because it's the stuff that's fairly easy to memorize, right? And so you got, well, I'm rolling now, right? And then I leave the longer essay to the end so that if you think you've done, you don't have to sit here and wait for that last section of the exam, right? If you really think I got nothing more to say, you can turn your exam in and leave. Right? So I leave the longer essay for the exam. I've seen other questions that go. We still have 2 minutes left.
What if I like very recital? Like, for example,
If as long as it doesn't come too close to one of the others. But again, this one is the, I'll tell you 2 things. Okay, one, I'm not going to get all redneck on you. If you spell Botticelli with 1 T.
No, but like I say, Madonna and Child with 2 angels, or
Yeah, and it says Madonna and Child with angels. Then I would be okay with that, right? At the same time, if you just said, the Madonna, then we're not kind of close enough there. That would give you partial credit, but you're not quite close enough. Or if you have St. Christopher's and you called him St. Joseph or something like that, right? Then you're not there, right? But the whole point of the slide of the study sheet is that it kind of gives me, okay, this is what I expected you to know, and I can use that as a yardstick. Okay. And I'll probably make the rest of the class happen. So opening tonight at Barrett Gallery, if you want some free nibbles and drinks and whatnot, there's 4 artists in the show tonight. Really kind of fantastic stuff. It looks really good. So, on your way home, hop on over. They're there till 7 o'clock. I'm going to run over there myself right now. So.